Financial freedom is one thing. Lifestyle freedom is I can say no to the things I want to say no to because I can. I can do the things I want to do, but say no to the things I don't want to do. I don't have a boss saying, hey, listen, you have to do this today. They kind of go hand in hand.
Hello and welcome to the conversation. Mary Catherine Johnson here, and I get to welcome Shawn Moore. Shawn, how you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, Mary. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Now, Shawn is an active real estate investor of many years, you'll find out, and the host of Vacation Rental Revolution podcast, and the founder of Vodyssey, the #1 vacation rental investing education company in the world, of course. So yeah, welcome to the conversation. Tell me, I love that name Vodyssey, and you were sharing with me a little bit before we got on the call about how you came up with that. Obviously, we can all hear the root word in that name, but tell us why you chose that root word in your name of your company.
Yeah. So I was telling you before, I had my company used to be called Lifestyle Asset University, and I'm here based in Utah, and the state of Utah sent me a letter and said, hey, Shawn, you got to stop using this business name. It's not allowed because you're not an accredited university. And so at the time I was going through a rebrand, and one of the words, because being an investor and going through this, entrepreneur and everything else, I really resonated with the word odyssey, which is just this big, long, epic journey, the ups and the downs and everything in between. And, we definitely believe in the road less traveled, and I mostly despise the easy button. And so it was, an odyssey is definitely not easy. And so I took the word odyssey, put a V in front of it for vacation homes, and that's where we landed.
And here we are. Yeah. I know there are many reasons, as we were talking about before the show, that we are going to get along well. And you just mentioned my favorite poem that I have actually framed on my wall. Wonderful poem about the road less traveled. So so let's dive into this. You've been a real estate investor for how many years again?
25 years now. Yeah. I started in 2000.
Wow. And so what brought you to where you are now? Take me a little bit on that journey. I know it's an odyssey. I know it's an epic adventure so far, and it will continue to be. But what got you here?
I started back in 2000, just right out of college, quickly got a job for about 6 months. And I saw this guy that was making a lot of money on the side doing some real estate stuff. He was doing a lot of fix and flips at the time, and went to one of his seminars and I followed his process, did a wholesale deal, and realized, holy crap, I made, at the time I was making $31,000 a year. I did a wholesale deal and made $19,000 a year in a weekend. And I thought, maybe this is better. And so, it was, I took that check, I quit my job, and the rest was kind of history. For about 6 years, that was the only wholesale deal I've ever actually done. And that got me started. But for about 6 years, I dove into the fix and flip game. So I had some construction background all through high school and everything else. That's how I paid my bills, was roofing during the summer times, so I had some construction. So I was I was wanting to do the fix and flip and all that stuff before HGTV was around, and paid my bills for a while, and got into, from there I rolled into long-term rentals, started getting into long-term rentals, wanted to create some passive income for myself, and doing some development deals and bigger deals. And before you knew it, we started running into the crash of 2008. And during that time, I was buying some homes, but we also had some vacation homes, not to rent out, not to do anything. But when the hard times hit through we were working on a big development deal. And actually we were not the principals on that deal. And one day the feds came in and shut the office down and locked up all the computers and the file cabinets and said, hey, this one's over. And the principals got indicted on securities charges. And so you would know a little thing about that when they're raising money not the right way. The feds and the SEC hears about it, and people get in trouble. And so I'm preaching to the choir on that one, right?
Yeah,
and so
definitely.
They were that got shut down, but because that got shut down, so did our income, and it was the only deal we were working on at the time. And I started that property that I started selling everything, but this was in mid-2008. I bought the property in 2006. I couldn't afford to sell it because I owed a lot more than it was worth at the time. And so I started putting it on Craigslist and local classifieds and renting it on the weekends. And kind of this was, you have to remember, in 2007 and 8, this was before Airbnb and Vrbo and all that stuff was even really popular. Airbnb was just getting launched in 2007 or 8, I think. And so nobody really knew what it was. It was more just urban couch surfing, right? And so, but we just kind of out of necessity, and we started renting on the weekends, and it started making like pretty good money. And we're like, man, this thing's not only paying, we were just trying to cover the bills, and it's not only paying the bills, but we're actually making money with this. Well, fast forward to about 2012 or 13, and I was going through what I really liked about real estate, and I started thinking, man, there might have been something to that short-term rental asset. And we started really diving in, and by 2015, we were all in. That's all we've ever done. Now that's the only thing I own in my portfolio. We started writing books about it, and I started launching a course about it, and before you knew it, we're at today, and it's been a wild ride watching that entire asset class grow up.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, it took something. So let me ask you this: rather than saying it took something, let me ask you what it took. What did it take for you to? You said you went back to that and you thought, maybe there's something more to this.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you kind of went away from it a little bit, and then you wanted to come back to it. What was it that made you want to come back and revisit?
Yeah, it was actually a very specific time frame in my life. And so we were actually on every year for my kid's birthday. I have twins. And every year for their birthday, we would go to Hawaii and spend a week in Hawaii. We don't do presents or anything like that, but we love to travel and we spend time. So every time somebody has a big event, we have a trip around it and we all hang out, right? Well, one of these trips, we were on the beach in Hawaii, and my son Wyatt was watching me, and I was working on a development deal. And it was one of those that, just one of those frustrating days. I was on the phone all day long, not being present with the family and frustrated. And I got off the phone, and Wyatt grabbed my hand. And he said, "Hey, Dad, if you don't like doing real estate in Utah, you should just do it here in Hawaii, because Hawaii is awesome, right?" So a 4-year-old's just thinking, this is just way better than you. If it's that bad in Utah, why don't you do it in Hawaii? Well, that conversation just got me started thinking. At the time, Robin Williams Tony Robbins was talking a lot about Robin Williams. And he was talking about success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure, right? Robin Williams is a really successful guy, just, and funny. He all made us laugh, but he was just not fulfilled and ultimately took his own life. And Tony Robbins was talking about that. At the same time, our neighboring state of Idaho was running this big travel campaign called 18 Summers. And it was going through my head saying, hey, listen, time's short and you got to do the things that are important to you. And you got to spend the time with, and it was talking about 18 Summers with your kids. Like, hey, listen, come visit Idaho because there's all these national parks and everything else. And I was seeing that. But those 3 conversations made me start thinking, what do I really like about real estate? And at the time, that big development deal that went under was actually a really high-end second home ski resort community. And so we were starting to get introduced to kind of the experiential world of real estate. And I really enjoyed that. I obviously love to be a real estate investor, and I was really trying to hone in on an asset class that got me excited. The development deals just didn't. I just didn't like them. They were money for us, but it wasn't something that was fulfilling to me. But I loved the vacation home side of it, and I loved it and I started thinking, man, remember when we used to have that property and it did so well? And that's really what got me really diving in and looking into it. And then obviously we were really on the front end of that growth spurt with the asset class of short-term rentals and becoming really mainstream at this stage. And so, yeah, it was a time in my life where you started asking those questions, and those 3 things came up all at the same time, and I started saying, what do I really want to do here?
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun.
What do I want to do when I grow up? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What do I want to do when I grow up? And that's where we landed.
That's fantastic, because what I found in talking to successful entrepreneurs specifically is that your past, your experiences in your past, the way you look at the world from your past, and the way the things you've navigated in your past, basically influence your future.
Yeah.
And create the innovation that you offer to the particular niche you're in or industry you're in or whatever. So basically you were innovating the short-term rental space, big picture real estate, right? But really tight, focused picture, short-term, rental space.
Yeah.
And you were innovating that on your own without any apps to associate with it
Yeah.
or any software that made it easier and all that kind of thing, and took a lot of money out of it as well.
Yeah.
But that's innovation.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and that, it's always been really exciting because, like you said, Mary, this was brand new and it was innovating at the time, and the innovation made it more invigorating, right? We were like, okay, this is kind of fun, like this is kind of exciting. You don't know really where this thing's going, you don't really know what's going on. I've always been a huge believer that real estate is the biggest and best wealth building tool for the average American, by far. I just don't. I think it's hard to even argue, but it's you and there's pros and cons in every single asset class. I love real estate in general across the board. There's so many great asset classes to get into, but with the short-term rental side of it, we've just really very much enjoyed, because we're also buying properties that we're really interested in. We use all of our properties as a family, and so it's been a lot of fun to be able to, build a portfolio that you can say, hey, grab the bags. We're going to go fly to the, Georgia for the weekend, and we're going to go enjoy it. And we're stuck in Utah, and it's a whole different experience for my kids to go see the South, right? Instead of the Intermountain West. And it's been a lot of fun to have a portfolio all over to be able to do that.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, I can only imagine. Travel is definitely, as I was mentioning to you before we started, our number one goal as well. My husband and myself, my kids are grown. How old are your kids?
They're 14. They just turned 14. So we just got back from Hawaii, our annual Hawaii trip. So that
There you
same beach,
go.
every single year we go to the same place.
Oh, do you go to the same place? Where is it?
Yeah, we go their birthday trip. We always go to the same place. We go to Ko'olina on the island of Oahu, and spend time at the exact same resort. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the only time I've been is in Maui, and we went to the Grand Wailea.
Yeah.
It's got all, and this was when the kids were, I think, like 5 and 8. So the slides, the water slides,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff was really what they wanted. So, but yeah, just to be able to take off and have vacation rentals that you can actually plan your own vacation around,
Yeah.
to be able to see potentially the world, but also specifically the United States,
Yeah.
must be amazing. So you also mentioned training and getting into this whole university idea, but in terms of education. So how did that then morph into education?
Yeah, it's so for me, and anybody who knows me, I'm about the biggest introvert that people see, and they don't think that because I speak on stages all the time and everything else. But in real life, outside of my when you put the business face on, in real life, I just want to do my thing. I don't want people who know who I am. I'm not an Instagram influencer by any stretch. I'm just the guy that's I almost make fun of the people that walk around with their phones in front of them all day long, right? It drives my marketing experts nuts because they want me to do it.
Yes.
And I'm just like, I'm not doing it, right? It's just not me. And so the last guy that would want to be more of a coach or a face of anything, I just wanted to run my own business and do my thing. But as I was doing it, because at the time, short-term rentals were gaining so much popularity, and we were kind of one of the first people in the game, we were getting asked to speak at a lot of stuff. We were getting asked to show people a lot of stuff. And so at first I decided to write the book. Actually, I wrote a book called What the Hell is a Lifestyle Asset? And it was showing our 9-step process of really how to tackle acquisition, right property, right location. How do we go about setting up an experience, because we're in the experience business, not the property business, and then really how to market it once you have all that, right? And so the goal was just to have a book that I could say, here's the process. And then at the time, we had, I can't remember who I met. I think at the time it might have been Russell Brunson. I was paying attention a lot to Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi and Russell Brunson during this time. And I've always been a fan of Tony and Dean for a long time. And then Russell was introduced to me about that time, and saying, hey, listen, you have the book, you have this stuff, go out and start having a course around it, right? And so I thought I would teach 100 people to do this. I thought, okay, well, if I could help 100 people kind of get into this game, walk into it with their eyes wide open, help them on this journey, get started, it would be awesome, right? It would be a real success. Well, we're a little over 3,000 people now in our high-end mastermind group, which has been a lot of fun over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, we're definitely swimming in the same oceans.
Y-
So I know those names well. I
Yeah.
remember when Tony and Dean came up with their knowledge broker
Yeah,
business,
I
and
think that was the
Mhm.
first one that I joined that actually
Yeah,
started Lifestyle Asset University in
yeah,
Vodyssey the way it is today. And it was
yeah.
the KBB.
That's it. I know that
Yeah.
well. I still have that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That's fantastic. So now you've got a book and a course, and you're still doing your properties as well, which is really what gave you that knowledge.
Yeah.
Now, for the people in the audience who don't know what we mean by KBB and what I was talking about, knowledge broker, well, this is kind of the natural progression. Usually, what happens is once you start talking about at all the success you're having in a particular niche or a particular industry, people start flocking to you and say, "How are you doing that? What are you doing?" And you start talking about it, and you are now seen as an expert or a knowledge broker, where you have a certain piece of knowledge that other people want and will pay you for. Rightly so, because you went through the school of hard knocks so that you could give it to them in your simple university or a
Yeah.
simple course, simple for them, not simple for you to create and get the experience around. So it's a whole process, and we now know with all kinds of webinars and all kinds of challenges and all kinds of things that people now became aware of it through COVID, more specifically than almost anything else. There are lots of people who have lots of pieces of knowledge that other people need and want to tap into. But this one specifically is, I mean, for you to say experience business, not property business, shows me that you get it. This is not, you're not just helping people buy a piece of property and
Right.
rent it out. You have a vision beyond just the money-making part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it ties into the money making part, right?
Of course.
With any business, you have to understand what business you're in. What are you really selling? What is the consumer really buying? What are they trading their hard earned dollars for that you have? And like if I have long-term rentals, they're trading their money for a property to live in, right? We're in the property business. Where in the short-term rental game, specifically, we're in the hospitality business and we're in the experience business. And I think a lot of investors confuse that they, as long as they just have a awesome, beautiful property, they're going to make money. And I think that the big mistake that a lot of people make, or maybe the big disadvantage that a lot of people had, was they were introduced to short-term rentals specifically during a time when having a short-term rental was like having toilet paper during COVID. Everybody made money. Everybody looked like a genius. And so they learned the game thinking just having a property makes you money. Well, that asset class has grown up to be very, very mature at this stage. Supply finally caught up with demand. And even though the consumer's spending more money than they've ever spent, even during COVID, during those great years that a lot of people were just making money hand over fist, your competition's more too, and your competition's better, and the bar's been raised. And so not understanding that costs you a lot of money on the back end. And so, yeah, it is more than just here's a property, here's an investment that I bought, and now I want to put it on the market and make money. Well, understand what the consumer really wants, right? And you have to really look at it through that lens. So like with no matter what you're doing, right? Right. If I'm listening to you guys and I'm trying to raise money for a deal and I don't understand what they're really like, how do I sell it? How do I become the expert? How do I sell my knowledge to that person with the money? And like I have a lot of my members that are like, hey, listen, I want to raise money. How do we go raise money? And I tell them first, you got to become an expert. You got to know what you're doing. You got to know how to do this stuff, because when you do, people will naturally say, hey, I don't know how to do it, but you do.
Mhm.
Can I be a part of this?
That's
Right.
it.
And so I have a list of, if I pick up a phone, I could have any deal funded that I pretty much wanted today, right? But that's 25 years of doing it, and
Yeah.
it's building those relationships and everything else. Those same lenders are not going to lend to somebody else, even in my group, that I say, hey, listen, Mary, you should go talk to Joe because he's an awesome investor, but you don't know Joe, but you know me. You're like, Shawn, I'll give you the money, but I'm not giving Joe the money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, and that's exactly right. You need to not just become the expert, but also become that person who can communicate effectively
Yes.
your why, right?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
If you're just offering up an investment because it's going to give maybe a 2% more return than a CD, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't know if I want to take that risk, right? But if you have a why, if you have like you, how would you like to be able to take your kids to any particular vacation spot you want for their birthdays?
Yeah.
How would that be a different experience for your family versus buying a bunch of presents and having a party in the backyard?
Yeah.
That's a why. That's a purpose of doing this kind of business. Way beyond just that 2% you're going to give an investor that they can't get somewhere else. And so you have to be at least really good at communicating that. If nothing else, you also need to, yes, be the person who's willing to do the work and knows the ins and outs of that deal making, that investor process better than anyone, so that they would say, okay, yes, this is a deal I would even do for myself, but you're going to do all the work for the deal. So I'll just give you the money. You go do the work and then return the investment to me. Yeah, it's a different outlook. It's a different mindset. And that sounds like you've had different mindsets all along.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think I do. I always feel like everybody's like, you're like the contrarian of our business, right? You're the guy that's like not trying to, like, you will not find me. Like my kids have never flown in the back of a plane. They've never seen anything besides first class, but I don't board a plane with my phone showing my kids every time on Instagram and where we sit on the plane or where we vacation. Like you just can't go there and see that. I believe in trying to provide good information so people walk into this with their eyes wide open. Realistic information, but I don't, you mentioned the returns are almost secondary to an investment. It's what is like, why are you interested in this asset class versus something else? What are you really chasing? What are the property goals? So many people call us, hey, where's the best market to invest in? I'm like, that's like saying to me, hey, listen, I need to go buy some sports shoes, but I don't know what game I'm going to play. I don't know whether I should buy soccer shoes, basketball shoes, tennis shoes, whatever it is. And I'm like, listen, we have to start with why you really want to do this. We can figure out the returns later, right? We can figure out because returns are returns. I mean, if you really look at a lot of deals, to be honest, Mary, and I know that you guys see a lot of deals, the returns are a lot of times very similar. It's not a lot, they're not a whole hell of a lot different, And so it's a matter of saying, okay, why would I rather have a duplex or warehouse space or a short-term rental? Like what are the other intangible assets or tangible sometimes when it's personal use and short-term rentals that we can tap into of those benefits?
Yeah. That's a differentiator. That's what differentiates you. So a lot of people talk about, your brand or, some of the other terms that they might, your positioning in your business or anything like. But what you just described is actually differentiating yourself. So no one's going to be able to compare you to someone else who might offer short-term rentals because of what you just talked about, because it has a why behind it. And like I was talking about with your innovation, I don't think of innovation like the Steve Jobs and the Elon Musks of the world, right? We all innovate. So with your innovation and your why, there's no one on earth that has both of those things like you do.
Right.
They're different for each of us. So there's really no comparison, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're playing in a category of one, and that's what you want.
Right. That's right.
Right? There's no reason to regurgitate what everybody else is saying, because at the end of the day, numbers are numbers. Asset classes are asset classes. If you really understand why you're doing it, how to really maximize whatever you're going to be doing. I mean, it's important to understand what you need to do to maximize and optimize different deals and really recognize the opportunities. But when you do and you're confident about it, you don't need to show off your fancy cars or your gold chains or anything like that. People resonate with. Here's the thing that I really believe right now, Mary, is I believe there's a trust recession, and you better believe it if you're trying to raise money that there's a trust recession. And because there's so much stuff online with AI and everything that's written by ChatGPT on the marketing side that people are just over it, right? And they're like, hey, listen, I don't know what to believe, what not to believe. And if you, like we specifically, I tell my content managers and our marketing experts, I say, listen, I don't want my stuff chopped up. I don't want it edited. If I screw up, leave it in there.
Yeah.
Like I want people to know that this is just us, right? This is how we operate. And we do a ton of live events right now. I think it's really important to get in front of people, talk to people so that they can ask you questions and get a feel for what you're doing. But it's because of that trust recession out there, it's really, really important to start to connect with people. And then, but also it forces you to level up too, because you can't just rely on, a prompt in ChatGPT to give you the best marketing letter. Not that those tools cannot save you time and everything else. I'm not saying that you completely don't do it, but what happens is when you're doing like putting that stuff in there, so is everybody else. So guess what? You just blend into the crowd. You become another commodity. You become the next person that's DMing somebody to raise money or buy a deal or whatever else, because everybody's using the same prompts. Everybody's using the same the input's the same, the output's the same. It's all the same machine, right? And so just trying to say, hey, listen, just dive in and be yourself. And don't worry about if you heard Shawn talk or Mary talk or anybody else for that matter talk. Don't try to be like them. You just operate in a category of one. And because that's what people are going to be resonated with. And I learned that probably about 8 years ago. And it took me a while to learn. I'm 48 now. So I was probably about 40 years old before I really realized that, because I just wanted to always try to be like somebody that was more successful. Right. And I wanted to kind of copy or emulate or do what they were doing. And when I started realizing, hey, I'm just going to be me. That's when people actually are attracted to you.
That's right. That's right. It's what you stand for and what you stand against. And you've said, we are just going to have more conversations because too many things, especially when you talk about a category of one. There's an amazing book called Play Bigger that talks about category design. I love that book and the subsequent books and the prequel that just came out. But anyway, the category of one, if you're trying to satisfy everyone and just use ChatGPT, like you mentioned, and be vanilla, the same as everyone else, which is kind of what vanilla is. It might have a flavor, but it's a same flavor as everybody. And if you try and distinguish yourself, it's uncomfortable at first because you're afraid you might be judged. People might not like what you say. But the people who do like what you say will be I would rather have the smaller group of white hot participants who agree with what I say and are on board this train than a whole huge amount of lukewarm, doesn't really care what I have to say, which is what you're talking about. If you just do what everyone else does, you're going to have a huge group of lukewarm. If you follow your own voice, your own point of view, what you stand for and against, you will have a group of white hot participants in that voice, in that voyage, in that odyssey, and you'll go way farther.
100%. Yeah. You have those raving fans they're with you, good, bad, or ugly. And they almost does, you almost can't mess up with them when they are attracted to you and your authentic self. Right.
Absolutely. So, another term, and I've got to tell you, I'm going to ask you for permission to use the, and I don't know if you came up with that or if you heard it somewhere as well, but the trust recession.
Yeah, I probably did definitely hear it somewhere. I don't know who to give credit to, but
well,
I'm sure
I'm
that
definitely
I heard
taking that one because it's we are in that right now. Too many people have heard too many things. I hear every time we do a masterclass or a boot camp, I hear people say, you're saying this. I've heard people make promises like this before. I don't know how are you going to prove it to me? And I'm like, guys, I got to be honest with you. I'm not going to undo all those times that people have misused your trust and abused your trust and made you promises without being able to back it up. I can only be transparent with who I am and what I'm saying here and promise you that I will always be transparent. I'm not going to hide anything or all of a sudden upsell here. And it's just not the way we work. We wouldn't be in business very long if we did, at least as far as I'm concerned.
No, you wouldn't. And that's the thing. It's like, okay, ask the questions. It's good to ask those questions. You've been burned in the past. Go deeper with me. Ask me more questions. Do some more due diligence. Talk to the people we've worked with, and take the time and try to go deeper than you did with the people that burned you, right? And see if you can mitigate that risk. But at the end of the day, just because you had a crazy ex-girlfriend and she was a redhead doesn't mean all redheads are crazy, right? And so it's like, it doesn't like you're going to have it's going to be, a short-lived opportunity span if you just are going to take that road and draw a hard line in the sand, like, hey, I was burned in the past, so I'm never going to do anything moving forward either.
Yeah.
That's, you don't want to be that person either.
Absolutely not. So trust, recession, another term that I haven't heard that term bantered around very much, but a term I have, and I'd like to get your opinion on, is financial freedom.
Yeah.
Right? Financial freedom. People talk about that all the time. I have to admit, I've used it myself, but it gets thrown around loosely all over the place.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your definition of what that is, and if it's a real term that matters these days, and how it potentially drives you, or your equivalent of that term drives you.
Yeah. So financial freedom to me is not just an arbitrary number that somebody, like, it's funny when I ask somebody, what is financial freedom to you? And they'll say I would say 90% of the people that you ask that question to is going to say, if I could get $10,000 a month. $10,000 a month seems like this number that is associated with this financial freedom, and it's almost been cliche anymore, right? And we use it, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's like on my book, and so I have like how to build lifestyle financial freedom, investing in vacation homes, and it's so overused, to your point, that I'm like, I want to take it off, right? I want to take it off there. It's been on, but to me, financial freedom, I think people are a lot closer to my definition, at least, of financial freedom, which is just having enough passive income to pay your living expenses, pay your bills. Like, right? If your bills are $5,000 a month and your financial freedom number is $5,001, right? Or $5,000, that's to me financial freedom. But it's having assets, whether it's a business. We're talking a lot about real estate, whether that's whatever that ends up being. Maybe it's stocks that pay dividends. It's got to be something that's spitting off cash flow, right? And that is going to cover your living expenses. And to me, that's what financial freedom is. I think a lot of people associate financial freedom with this really big number that all of a sudden they're done and they've got more money than they know what to do with. Not really. I mean, if you're living pretty frugally and you got $5,000 a month, your financial freedom number is $5,000 a month, in my opinion. Like, if you're making and spending $1 million a year, your financial freedom number is $1 million in a year. And so to me, that's what financial freedom is. The goal is to be able to not necessarily remove our active income, because we usually need to use our active income to purchase assets that can create passive income. And it's a process, and it takes time. But I think a lot of people think, well, that's so far out. And if they could have a 5 or 10 year time horizon, it's pretty doable for most people, even living on, very modest incomes. And when you compound and accelerate that progress, like doing the things that you guys help people do, which is, raise money and be able to get capital so that you can acquire assets a little bit sooner. Maybe you take a less percentage because you're now a percentage owner, not the whole owner, but you can go buy more assets that way too. So there's ways to accelerate that progress, but it's really not saying, to me, financial freedom is one thing. Lifestyle freedom is saying, hey, listen, I can say no to the things I want to say no to because I can, right? I can do the things I want to do. I have the time to say no, or do the things I want, say yes to the things I want to do, but say no to the things I don't want to do. I don't have a boss saying, hey, listen, you have to do this today. And they kind of go hand in hand. If you have a boss and you have bills to pay, you got to listen to the boss, right? You better show up, right? But lifestyle freedom is that next stage, which is harder to define but it's really saying, hey, listen, I want to be able to say yes to the things I want to do and no to the things I don't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That no is a much more powerful word than yes sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's fantastic. So, Shawn, I tell you, I can't believe this time has flown by like it has, but we're definitely going to have another conversation. But let me kind of end our episode, or wrap it up a little bit with a little bit of a fun anecdote from our
Okay.
guests. So, can you share a story or a fact or some kind of experience that about yourself that listeners might find entertaining, interesting, and fun?
All right. I've got something that is a little odd, I guess. Not a lot of people have done this. And so I'm 48 years old. I've been married to my wife in next week, 25 years. And she was the very first girl I've ever kissed. So I've only kissed one girl my whole entire life. She was my first kiss at 15. We didn't get married till we were 23, but we've been together since we were 15 years old, solid. And she's going to be the first girl and last girl I ever kissed my whole life. So that's something that's not a lot of people can say that, Mary.
Not a lot of people, but you're looking at one too. So,
Are you? That's awesome.
yes,
I've never told the
16.
story and somebody told me the same thing.
Same thing. 16. My husband and I have been together since we were both 16. We're about 7 months apart in age.
Yeah.
And we were first date, first kiss, and we've been married. We just celebrated 42 years.
Congrats. That's so awesome. That's
Thanks.
fun. Those are
So
stories that you don't hear very often.
I've never
Yeah,
met another person that says
I
that
haven't either.
either.
So yeah,
So
that's
two
awesome.
peas in a pod here, or
I
four
love
peas
it.
in a pod, if you
Yeah,
will.
right. Right. Exactly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Shawn, I really had a blast. Is there one last piece of advice that you would give to our audience when they're looking to bridge that wealth gap, find that way that they can make a difference and not feel like every step they take, they work twice as hard, but they get half as much and feel like they're just trudging through mud constantly.
Right. Right.
Is there any last piece of advice you can give them?
One, there is a lot of people that are willing to pass the baton so you don't have to go make all the mistakes, right? And whether you've been burned in the past, and I get it, there's a lot of stuff online that I cringe at, right? And I roll my eyes at. But don't let that stop you from saying, hey, listen, I can do this. I know other people are doing this. Find the right people to help you because honestly, Mary, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel on anything you're doing right now. There are so many people that are willing to say, hey, listen, I'm going to accelerate your progress, compress those mistakes, mitigate the risk, pass this baton because we want to see you run further than we've ever run. And so if I think that like we talked about the trust recession, just because you've been burned and maybe and you should have your guard up, you should do some due diligence, but there are people that can help you accelerate the progress. And I will add to that. I mentioned earlier that I kind of despise the easy button and the word easy because what I honestly think the easy button is doing, everybody wants to be, we're all sold the easy button. We all want the easy button, whether it's the weight loss pill or whether it's the fast track to wealth or whatever it is, we want it, right? But if I challenge anybody that's trying to build that life they don't want to take a vacation from, is what I always say, is to pick the road less traveled in the beginning. Pick the harder road in the beginning because I really believe you have two choices when you're running down the road. If you take the easy road and you hit the easy button in the very beginning, that road becomes much, much harder down the line because you didn't build a solid foundation. If you take the road less traveled, that's a little bit harder in the very beginning, and you put in the work and you find the right blueprint, then all of a sudden that road becomes much easier down the line. And like we talked about being in a category of one, you feel like you're running down the road by yourself and run as fast as you want to run.
That's so fantastic. And yes, that helps you build the skills that you need
Yeah.
to be able to review other decisions that you'll make
Yeah.
down the road if you strengthen that muscle in the beginning
100%.
instead of feeling like it's just given to you and you just do. And that basically that brings everything we've talked about full circle because that also allows you to be you instead of just using someone else's blueprint exactly the way they've done it and
Yeah.
feel like you have to mirror them. You can actually morph it into yourself.
Right. Right. The blueprints are there, like I said, for you to run faster and farther, not to do exactly what we've done. Like there's nothing that pains me more when somebody says, I just want to do what you did, Shawn. I'm like, no, you don't. You want to take what I did and run way past me, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have to make the mistakes I made. You don't have the time horizon that I had to deal with. You can run faster and farther and use the blueprint to create your own path.
And there's already a Shawn Moore that is pretty darn amazing. And I don't think anybody can compete with that one. How about you go make your own?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate you saying that I'm amazing too, Mary. Thank you.
See, well, so far I got to tell you, we gotta have more conversations
Yeah,
because
right.
this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining me, and everyone listening. You can find out more about Shawn on our page with the podcast. All the information, his links will be there. Information about what he does, who he is, where you can find more about him and his company. And if you liked this conversation, I invite you to explore all the other conversations we have in this podcast. And, drop us a line. Let us know some of the things you might want to hear about in this show, because we are here to bring incredible people like Shawn to you so that we can all grow together. Because I learned a lot from Shawn today, and I'm sure you did. And we would love to find out more about what you might want to learn about. And then we can find more people who can provide that. So, Shawn, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait for our next conversation. And I can't wait to hear more about what you do and more about the different places you've visited with your wonderful assets that you've accumulated, and just to watch your progress. I think it's going to be just so fun. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode of Planet Wealth Fortunes of the Brave, check out our other videos for more insights and strategies to elevate your financial freedom. You can subscribe right here and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Join our community and take your financial future to the next level. I'll see you in the next video.